what we are going to have now is a panel discussion at which some of the highlights of the themes that we discuss could be, thought about again. As you will see that as we discuss this theme against torture, there was a very deliberate shift in the discussion, in that it is by promoting an alternative method of doing criminal investigation by the police that we can hope that there will be public support as well as political will to change the present use of torture. So that shift of emphasis is, I think, a very important from the strategic point of view. So what we are going to do is to discuss about 7 questions, and questions are around, you could see. So the first question that we would try to discuss with the 3 panelists, all of whom you know, is how to make police reforms a talking point in our countries. To achieve anything, it has to become talking points by which consensus on the issue can be created. Iran, would you like to?
Okay, I think my answers would be a series of small steps rather than trying to handle the big issue. And we've heard sometimes the comment that but it's the bigger political structure and the bigger political issue. I'm going to leave that on a side for a moment and just think about the small things. I think one way to get this thing as a national talking point is to actually campaign and say that the police are underpaid. Because I believe that if you really want to do reform, then rather than expect justice from people, you have to first do justice to them. You see, I believe that actually in that principle generally, because often we look at a problem and we are looking at what's wrong, and then we are trying to pin the responsibility on somebody. But if you look at the wider social contract, often the issue is that we haven't kept our part of the bargain and we are expecting others to keep their part of the bargain. So we have to make it an issue. We have to make it a talking point. The question is that, about making it a talking point. Now, if you start talking about the fact that they are underpaid and they are really underpaid, right, and it's going to get some traction immediately. After all, you're trying to bring about change and you have to get people to buy into the concept. So if you first empathize with them, you're basically going to win them over. And very few people will be able to actually argue against that, right? So I would take that as a kind of a starting point in actually creating a debate. The next thing, can I elaborate on that, or you want me to?
You could, yeah.
Right, the next thing is a little anecdotal story. A few very senior retired policemen came to see me recently, including some ex-DIGs. And they came and they were lamenting about the state of the country and society and the police force and so forth. Actually, these were the people in charge of it for quite some time. But anyway, I was heartened by the fact that they came, because I thought actually, even after they retired, that there has been some enlightenment, which is good. Then they repeated a small story. And the story was this. They said that when they were much younger officers, they went to Singapore for a training program. So they were kept in a certain place and they were taken for the training program to another place. When they went, every day a bus came to the place they were residing. They got onto the bus. They were in their uniform. Policemen from the Singapore came, senior policemen in uniform, and the bus took them to this place. One day they were late. So as they were going, they asked the driver, can we, why don't we just go, isn't there some shortcut to this place? So the driver said, yes, this, if you go down this road, we'll get there very quickly, we'll be on time. But actually it's a one-way system, so we have to go actually round and come to that place. So the Sri Lankan policeman told the Singaporean police counterpart, so, you know, you're a policeman, I'm a policeman, you're in uniform, I'm in uniform, why don't we just, it's a short distance, just go down this road. The Singaporean senior policeman turned to him and said, no, we can't do that. You see, we have to follow the law, so we have to go around. And if we were to take the shortcut, the first thing that would be done is we would be dismissed from the service. That's the first principle. The second principle was we will be charged. And when we are charged, the fine is greater for us as officers of the state rather than for an ordinary citizen, because the ordinary citizen, it may be presumed that he was innocent but still wrong, but in our case it won't be presumed because we are supposed to know the law. That was a telling story that this senior policeman, Sri Lankan police officials were repeating to me. It was a telling story because it was saying something about my own society, right? And when you are thinking about, you know, how do you actually reform this system? Now the idea that I came, and this is the idea that I came, because they're talking about, you know, making a talking point, taking small steps, right? I was thinking is, why don't we get all the senior retired, you know, ex-policemen, DIGs, generals, if you want to widen this thing, right, as a part of the reform process. After all, they were the people in the system. They have lots of goodwill, unlike outsiders going and trying to say what's wrong. It's a bit of a self-examination. So I thought it was a strategy that may be also, you know, one thing to pursue.
I was reflecting on the situation in the Philippines, and of course, as we have reported the other day, there are still many problems in our country, and so far as violence and torture and conflict are concerned. But I would like to take off from the idea of what we already have and build from there. Taking off from the opportunities rather than, you know, the bad things that can pull us down. I believe that we have made little inroads in legislative reforms, and we have a relatively vibrant civil society. And there are a number of people who came from the human rights movement that are now in government. And there's a growing initiative towards reforming the security sector and the police sector as well. And I see this as an opportunity to encourage more dialogue and interaction between institutions and also communities. And we have infrastructures actually for doing that. In the Philippines, we have these mechanisms called the Barangay Human Rights Action Center, and it is something provided for under the dynamics of our Commission of Human Rights and supported by the local government code. And it is a mechanism whereby citizens and local governing authorities can actually gather, set up a structure for monitoring human rights, and also to provide the space for encounters, affirmative encounters between citizens and public officers, including police. So we were thinking of optimizing these opportunities and invite a discussion about violence in general. And in the process also provoke a reflection into in the police sector to think for themselves not only as part of an institution which has its own organizational culture, tradition, and also have the task to fulfill, but also as part of the community that they are hoping and trying to serve. And maybe by inviting a discourse about violence, both the citizens, people in the community, and the police can arrive at a shared realization about common desires, about aspirations, and also see the distinctions about where their roles lie and how can they negotiate conflicts or attend to conflicts in the community without having to resort to violence, including torture. So I'm going to...
Would you want to say
I
something?
would just like to go a little off tangent from where Mr. Eran started on the issue of how the particular cannot be discussed without looking at the overall reasons why some issues have to be tackled. For instance, if you look at torture, at the remedies to be provided by the state in terms of legislations or in terms of laws and acts, it cannot be the only solution to the issue of torture, because I feel that torture cannot be looked at in isolation. If you look at the action of state and non-state actors, especially in the countries that are present here, where a long history of the presence of non-state actors and the political challenge to address those issues have resulted in a lot of torture and custodial deaths. You cannot look at the uncomfortable issues without understanding the whole dynamics of how it affects and impacts how you address it locally, even as a state. For instance, if you look at India, the present National Human Rights Commission has in fact given a statement recently saying that in the state of Manipur, all the police and the paramilitary are crooks, because there are no issues of, all killings of all fake encounters, or all encounters are fake, except for one or two. And this is a statement by the National Human Rights Commission. And if you look at it from the context of police reforms, I am in the Public Accounts Committee in my state as a legislator, and we have two cases where the corruption in the police, in spite of the 7 directives being issued by the Police Commission in India, Commission on Reforms in India, where we should have a state security board, where transfer posting should be done by a committee. The specifics of it need not be undermined, because of the fact that the former Director General of Police himself is being investigated by us on charges of corruption of to the tune of $180 million if we convert it into dollars. Then there is the case of the Superintendent of Police being suspended and the issue is being investigated because he was involved in a racketeering where arms and ammunitions were being sold to the insurgent groups. So as a legislator, we are dealing with issues of corruption within the police force. At the same time, we are also discussing in the assembly on police reforms within the state, and this is symptomatic of what is happening in all the other states in India.
Thank you. Now, discussing the same thing, connecting it also to the second question, how to convince the legislature and the executive to allocate greater budgetary allocations to improve the investigating capacity of the police. Say, for example, Iran mentioned that creating incentive by increase of salary. Now, would you not think that a lot of incentive will be created if the police are given, say for example, there is no DNA facility in the country, and today the much of credible investigations rely on a DNA facility. Now, if the legislature get involved on this issue to creating of and it doesn't require huge sums. Not only that, there had been usually assistance by other governments for that kind of issues. So how do you think on a budgetary scale the governments can help in this issue?
I mean, certainly without investment, you can't make the change. You need more investment. I was referring to remuneration as not just salary. I was referring to it as incentive. So remuneration training definitely has to be a part of that. But the issue on training is not confined to the police. There's generally an issue about investing in training in the public sector generally. Actually, it's extremely low, extremely low. People don't also see the value in that the investment you make in training, the return is going to be extremely high, but people can't see that value. From my personal experience, I took over running a bank which used to be owned by the government. And I remember that when I went in there, the training budget was like 15 million rupees annually. And I increased it in one shot to 65 million. People were quite surprised and shocked. But it was no surprise at all to me because I knew the value because I had worked in a multinational company previous to that, in a multinational bank, that if I put that, the return is going to be much higher. So it's not only about the police. In the public sector itself, there's a huge problem because we are underinvesting in training. Unfortunately, my experience has been, though I'm an opposition MP, I have lobbied government and government ministers, including the ministers on human resources and senior ministers, and basically try to sell them the idea that if you invest more in training, you're going to get it. So it's remuneration, it's training. And then, as Basil just mentioned, you have to have the tools. I mean, DNA testing was, one of the tools. Now, I don't know the answer of how do you go about convincing people. I just don't know the answer to that because sometimes, there are people are not, are blind because they refuse to see. You see, not because that people are not showing them. But if you take it in terms of the economic perspective, in terms of the total budget of the country and what we are actually spending in terms of the criminal justice system, it's appallingly small. The amounts we are spending as absolute numbers and percentages, it's extremely small. So I can say with responsibility from an economics perspective and a finance perspective, these are expenditures that can easily be made. I give you another quick anecdotal story. As you know, the former commander of the Sri Lankan army, who was the presidential candidate in the last presidential election, who ran against the present incumbent president, he was court-martialed and incarcerated shortly after that election and was held in prison for nearly 2.5 years. I went to see him on a number of occasions on my own because I had the privilege to do that as a member of parliament. And one day when I was with him, he told me, Iran, just in the next block, there are 2,000 prisoners and only 8 toilets for those prisoners. Right now, being a former banker and my mind working very quickly on the maths of everything, I figured out this is the main prison in the country. To fix this prison, it's not going to cost a lot of money, right? To fix this prison, even if we tiled all the floors of every toilet and we built extra toilets and we created some parks, we put some libraries in, we changed the environment, we changed the mindset, it can be done. So it's not a question about money and resources. It's a question about political will, and it's also a question about having a vision of where do you want to see your country going, what kind of society do you want to build. It's a lack of vision that people really can't see this. So the question is not in finances and money. That's not a constraint. The constraint is political, and the constraint is also really people not really understanding or having a clear vision.
See, connected to things like these technical aspects. One of the big problems about torture is that people's capacity to easily complain, get their complaints registered. Now, computerizations at the police stations. And today, these are not big investments. Now, how far that has progressed in the Philippines? Now, if you go to make a complaint, are the complaints taken down in computer and?
Well, how I wish that the police in the Philippines would have that kind of a system, computerization and all that, and definitely those kind of a situation would require some budgetary allocation. So in the Philippines, there's a wide perception that police are not that professional, not very competent, and that's why they resort to shortcuts, including using violence to extract information. And they have very little public support. And the police authorities, the higher ups, they know about that. And many politicians are also sympathetic. There's now a move, as far as I understand, within the police establishment in the Philippines to institute reforms to move towards professionalization of the force by raising the criteria of recruits to college level, those who have undergone college education. And but police also need gasoline to do their work, to run the cars, and as you said, computers. Now the budget has to be approved by Congress, and the Department of Interior and Local Government proposes. The DILG tries so much to convince the Congress that it's worth a while supporting. Now, as I understand, they have invested on training for forensic investigation. They have established scene of the crime units where operatives are trained in the art of gathering evidence using science. And also some DNA testing laboratories have been established. But of course, this kind of developments are still not enjoyed in other places of the Philippines. But the DILG has to show that this kind of investment can make a difference in terms of crime prevention and prevention of violence and better investigation techniques and reduction of complaints of torture.
See, when you take India, see, one of the most shocking things is that even the mortuaries, many places, they don't even have a proper mortuaries for keeping dead bodies. We have seen videos where bodies are scattered in some places. So what is the kind of, on that kind of issues, which is for peanuts for, from the point of view of Indian capacity, what kind of attempts can be made to create awareness, to improve this kind of facilities? And also, what I know is that the forensic training in India, despite of its resources, is very limited. Sri Lanka, being a much smaller country, has a far better number of forensically trained doctors than India. Now, on that kind of issues, what do you think is by the legislators and others could do?
For the forensic investigation, the forensic labs are not available in all the states. For instance, for the state of Nagaland, in order to avail the facility of forensic lab, we have to go to West Bengal, which is like you have to fly over Bangladesh airspace to reach. So flying over another country to reach. So there is an attempt, and several reports have been made and letters have been written to the central government, because the central government prioritizes certain security related investments or budgetary allocations. For instance, if you look at the police reforms vis-a-vis police modernization is one aspect which has been prioritized by the Central Home Ministry. And in fact, a lot of budget is allocated for building barracks, building police stations, buying arms through the various ordinance factories in India, and also buying vehicles for the police force. Whether that is an incentive to modernizing or to enabling the police reforms is something to be investigated or contested. One stark realization that we are right now facing with is that the focus has been, this has been in practice for a very long time now that instead of the health and education sectors, the military sector is budgeted more, and in terms of percentage even there is a stark difference. This has resulted or contributed towards the quality of services that is being provided at different levels, whether it is the mortuary or whether it is at the different jails that are there in India. Police reform has not been able to reach to that level, and the discussion at the center is also determined by what is called both the internal and external security threat, and this has been the defining political discourse in terms of allocating budgets in the country.
Looking into a related issue, say now you mentioned in India that there are investigations into corruption of the police and things like that. Now, like in Philippines and Sri Lanka, what's the kind of parliamentary supervision into the disciplinary matters of the police? Now, there's a whole lot of complaints about discipline is being collapsed. Say select committee inquiries or any kind of, is there any kind of parliamentary supervision of discipline?
In Sri Lanka, unfortunately, there hasn't been. And with the conflict in the country for quite some time now, the police has also been under the defense ministry. During the period of the conflict, the subject of defense has not been publicly discussed or debated in the country. And that kind of atmosphere did prevail while there was a military conflict going on. Now it's 4.5 years since the cessation of those hostilities and the end of the military conflict. And the first thing is that the police needs to be delinked from the defense establishment. That was done recently. So in theory, now we have a different ministry for the police. It doesn't report into the defense ministry, but it reports into the law and order ministry. And a new secretary was appointed to the law and order ministry, who is a former general from the military. So in theory, now there is a separation, but in practice, right, it's going to take a lot more work to be actually delink it from defense, and that needs to be done. Then we have to basically actually create the debate about police reform. It is certainly not on the table at the moment, so there has to be a debate that's created on police reform. Parliament needs to take responsibility now, basically because we have a new law and order ministry. There will be a new consultative committee that will be appointed for that ministry. And then the consultative committee should basically go into the matters you referred to, including the matters of supervision and matters relating to discipline and so forth. So that hasn't yet happened.
To begin with, there are several offices wherein civilians can actually raise complaints against the police. And one would be the People's Law Enforcement Board, which is also supported by the local government code. Another would be the National Police Commission and the Philippine National Police Human Rights Affairs Office. And of course, we also have the Internal Affairs Services, which is an internal agency within the police office itself. But as you may realize, this raises the problems, these agencies, regarding the independence. That's why they are not really popular offices where people go to lodge their complaint. But the good thing is that not too long ago, the Parliament has taken an active interest in opening up inquiry regarding reports of top-level police corruptions, which is somehow precipitated by the connection of the former president with the higher police officials. So there have been police officers that have been invited to answer to charges in an open inquiry called by the Senate. And as far as I understand, charges have been filed against these very, very senior police officers that have been associated with the past administration. But of course, you may say that this kind of investigation can be also seen as as a political exercise. But what we are more inclined with is we are more interested in is to see a thoroughgoing reforms within the police sector itself with the support of Parliament, and not only to open up investigation when it's convenient to serve a particular political agenda.
Okay. Now to turn to a little connected but in a little different area, which is I think interest to all of us. Now to how to create the more public interest and public sympathy for the torture victims. Now see, at the end, this is about people. They get tortured, they get injured, they get sometimes husbands or the family members are killed. Now, what kind of things are either happening or could be created more to bring a greater sympathy for these persons and their stories to be known?
I think the awareness of the problem is still very, very low. Despite the fact that the Sri Lankan cases have now been documented, both in writing as well as some of those victims talking on YouTube, still the public are relatively unaware. Partially also it's to do with the fact that internet penetration is not very high, particularly in the non-urban areas. So even though you have it on YouTube, it doesn't necessarily mean that people actually get a chance to look at it. So I don't know whether I have one clear answer, but one of the things that I was thinking about was beyond creating sympathy for the victims, but the general awareness issue is that like we have lots of television talk shows, and these are generally late night talk shows, and generally these things revolve around political subjects and the economy. Very rarely is it on what I would call a more social related subject. And one way is to try to widen the debate into taking these kinds of subjects into those talk shows. I have some ideas about it, and maybe we'll talk about that separately. So these things then get into the public space because the audience is already there. They are listening, right? But they are not being given this information. So if they are, before you can create sympathy, people need to have information. People need to be informed. It's only then that you're going to get some kind of response from them. So that might be one way. The other things is even the material that already exists. Is there other ways of distributing the material? So social media is certainly one way, but as I'm suggesting, it won't reach everybody. Are there other ways of really using this material? I think if we can bring the women's groups in some way into this effort of actually spreading the story, right? I think that may also be one way forward.
You want to say?
I think that's a very big challenge as far as the civil society movement in the Philippines is concerned. How to draw greater public attention to the violence or human rights violations of people that have been described as criminals, habitual offenders, terrorists, bad people as they have been portrayed in the media. Because sometimes when people are depicted by authorities to the media and by the media itself as bad people that have committed the public harm and is a threat to the safety of the general population, there's a tendency of the general public to tolerate the kind of pain and cruelty inflicted upon those people, because at that instance the humanity of the victim is erased. They are seen as bad people and therefore deserving some form of cruel punishment. And so the public outrage is not there. Maybe it can get the attention of the public because it becomes viral or it becomes so sensational, but it can only last for a few days. What I'm thinking is that people tend to sustain their sympathy if they feel a certain connection to the event or to the circumstances, and they feel that it is something that is close also to their stomach, or that it can also happen to them. That's why we were thinking that maybe a way to generate that kind of interest is to invite or to promote a public discussion or discourse about violence in general, and for people to reflect where they stand, where they are located in this scheme of things, and see what would be the role of the security forces and the policemen, and how they can also be vulnerable to this kind of cruelty.
See, one problem about taking the general issue of violence is that there is a censorship about the violence done by the state agents being discussed in the same way as the violence done by other, civil society.
Right.
See, violence is always imagined as the activity of ordinary civilians. And how the state agents are involved in violence, it is very difficult to get media attention or public debate or TV debate about it. So I think that is one area I think we should think about, not to let the general discussion about violence to drown the violence by the state agencies. Now to already Iran raised this issue about women. We know that at the police stations sometimes they are raped and there are sexual harassment, and Iran mentioned that when you ask from the women, they say that we don't want even to go to a police station to complain. Now we issued a whole magazine with about, I think, 80 interviews from around Asia, raising to women one question. That is, if you have a problem, will you go to the police station? And the unanimous answer was no. And some of them gave details saying that we don't want to have a further violation, something worse than what happened to us from, if we say, for example, domestic violence. We go to complain about husband, but then we get into another kind of sexual problems from the police. So this issue about women in particular, what kind of more greater proactive measures can be taken to raise this issue? You want to?
Yeah, I have a very interesting example in the form of the Naga Mothers Association. They emerged into the whole political and social space when there were a lot of fratricidal killing, and also killing by the Indian Army, killing of innocent citizens on mere suspicion, and because the law, especially the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, provided that space for the Indian Army to perpetrate without any recourse to justice. At that point of time, the Naga Mothers Association came up with the slogan, "Shed no more tears." Because of this war, there are so many widows, so many orphans. So the basic war cry for the Naga Mothers Association was to reach out to the heart of people, that let us not forget humanity. Let us preserve our race, our people, by stopping this senseless violence. So more than any other initiative to bring about resolution of the conflict, their participation forced people to rethink about the positions they were taking on the conflict, and it in fact brought the warring groups together, brought the Naga political group into the negotiating table. So that was a huge achievement, because from then on there has been negotiation. Till date, there is ceasefire. There is political dialogue going on. And the engagement has been again more meaningful because the Naga mothers did not only stop at bringing about this kind of resolution, but involve themselves into the whole peace process by, in fact, there is one anecdote I would like to mention. In one meeting of the civil society and the political groups in Delhi, of the Naga political groups in Delhi, the Naga Mothers Association president, who is very vocal, bold, stood up and said the whole Naga political problem is not because of any other person, but because of the man in the Naga community. She meant to say that we should not, because the men in the political groups, and they were only men, decided all the important decisions for the cause. And hence their participation was phenomenal in the sense that it infused a lot of enthusiasm, and then it went on by in fact generating similar kind of activities in the neighboring states. The Naga Mother Association even went to Sri Lanka to interact and exchange ideas with various groups in Tamil Nadu also, and Sri Lanka also, and then even in areas like Nepal. So a small action by a group of mothers had brought about big results in the whole conflict, and that was a very positive initiative by the women. With regards the fate that women have in the police station, there was a small research conducted by a research organization I used to run on whether the victims of violence against women wanted to file FIRs, go to the customary court, or what recourse they want to take for the crime against them. So we found out that most of the time they would like to go to the police station, file the cases, FIR, but after that, after a little investigation, the cases were dropped, and out of 100%, around 99% cases were dropped. So there was no justice provided to them. Therefore, we realized that there was little faith in the police, and also the women would not necessarily like to, because it takes a lot of courage for them even to go and file FIR after rape or sexual violence. So we saw that there is a trend which is decreasing, and in order to repose their faith in the system, I think a lot of initiatives have to be taken.
Last question to the panel. What possibilities are there to create, torture complaint cell in political parties? Now, surely for each political party, this question about, as a lot of people must be going to personally meet members of parliament and things like that. So what is the possibility of trying to encourage political parties to have a cell where the complaints can be made, they can send letters, and where there can be some volunteers who look into that and can be referred to members of parliament or even the leaders sometimes, and some questions could be raised in parliament, or some other ways it could be helped. Like, for example, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka now has a cell on disappearances, like that. What possibility is there on the torture issue? Political parties be encouraged to take up that issue.
I think how it works at the moment is like this. You have some kind of a violation of the law, or some kind of a, let's say, dispute with the police. The citizen will usually get in touch with their local member of parliament in the area, and then he would do two things. One thing he would do is, if it is required, he will probably bring it to the notice of the leadership of the party. The second thing he will do is, if there is some intervention that's needed with the police, he'll probably intervene. Often probably incorrectly intervene. The third thing he will do is, if it is demands a question in Parliament, he would frame the question in Parliament and he would ask the question. And that process goes on. It's not about torture, but it's about generally about some violation. The question is whether it warrants to have a separate unit only on torture. I think the first step maybe is to centralize what's already happening and document what's already happening, which is on the wider thing, on generally wider violations of the law and sometimes police excesses or inactions or something like that. So certainly that idea could be taken on board and discussed.
Well, as far as I understand, in our context, we don't have a very strong party politics system, in the sense that politicians join a particular party for the purpose of having a machinery to campaign and to win an election. But the party platforms are hardly taken seriously, except for a number of party lists that have a very clear human rights orientation and campaign along that direction. So what happens usually is that a complainant or a citizens group would seek the support of particular parliamentarian, regardless of the party affiliation, and try to draw their attention to a particular human rights issue, torture, for example. So just to cite a very basic example, you've known Representative Romarate was spoken about, was the chair of a Human Rights Committee of the Congress, and while he is aligned with the dominant party, anyone can go to him, not because he's a member of the dominant party, but because he's the chair of the Human Rights Committee. And by that authority, I can exercise his function and perform his job as a parliament member. So for one concrete example is that we have just made an understanding with their committee to carry out an investigation about alleged maltreatment of people who have been involved in the uprising or unrest in Zamboanga City last month. So those kind of things are happening. There are, as far as I know, political parties don't have and are not inclined to put up cells, no, for human rights. But because they can campaign on a very particular human rights issue. But at the same time, they would say there are already existing mechanisms where people can bring up their case, like the Human Rights Committee of the Congress, for example, and the Commission on Human Rights.
With reference to the practice in India, where on any and every issue, there are select committees which are there in the parliament, but different committees are set up pertaining to issues of corruption or issues of some national importance, where committees are set up to address those issues. Most of the time when it is an issue of human rights violation, if ever there is a committee set up, it is to ensure that the public is, one, assured that there is a committee to address that. Second, although there is an outcome at the end of the day, it is so prolonged that by the time some recommendations come up from the committee, the issue dies down, and that is because the media also has a very low attention span, and mainstream media generally neglects issues of human rights violation unless it is of political significance, unless it is going to enhance their TRPs and increase their viewership. Hence, although we have committees on a parliamentary committee on HIV/AIDS, parliamentary committee on climate change, there's a National Human Rights Commission, there is no committee on torture, and I don't think that in the near future it is possible to have a committee on torture per se, unless it comes under the larger rubric of human rights and a redressal mechanism other than the Human Rights Commission is imagined in a country like India.
Okay. Thank you. Now, on the issues that were discussed, if any of you want to make any comments, we can take about 10 minutes before we go to the other item. Any of you want to raise a question or make any comment?
So every one of these points that are being made, I'm not saying that they are not valid, but actually there are feedback mechanisms which are not being considered here. Unless we look at those feedback mechanisms, we are not going to get anywhere with all these deliberations. In fact, I would say, if we are looking for a comprehensive statement of reasons why there is torture, in this meeting, Ernesto gave a fairly comprehensive list. And if you look at them together, if they are all reasons, clearly it's not possible to just come up with single sentence propositions as solutions. I just read out the list which I noted when he was speaking. And I mentioned it as bullet points. He said, torture will not go away merely because there is a law, which seems to be a very much in your face, very obvious proposition. Then he says 7 of 10 alleged terrorists complain of torture. So it's very widespread, huge. The reasons for torture, he says, reprisal is one reason. Legal remedies are inaccessible is also a reason, because the person who is tortured, the torturer knows that this person will not be able to do anything to me. Then he points out a very important fact. He says that for a person to be tortured, that person need not be political. So in all the countries that we are looking at, whether it is India or Philippines or Sri Lanka, it is not just, torture is not just an aspect of political oppression, it is a aspect of everyday life, which is a far more complicated thing than just political oppression, if it was merely a matter of political oppression. Then he talks of, he said, there is a notion, which is a misconception of course, but which echoes with my talk about process as punishment also. Once a person is arrested and put in jail, justice is served. This is a notion that prevails not only among the law enforcers, it prevails among the general population. There are reasons for this notion. We need to understand those reasons, and only then will we be able to do something. I'm not saying whether the notion is right or wrong.
See,
May I Basil, finish the points that he made basically. Then he says that taunting the enemy is one reason for torture. This is a psychological reason. We are, where are we addressing the psychology of the torturer in these questions? I don't know.
You see, this discussion was not meant to go into, if you go into all the documentation that we have made,
Correct.
this or every point that you have made has been stated 1,000 times.
Yes.
Right? So these are not unfamiliar issues to us. The large amount of work has been done on all of those issues. But what was meant was to take some of the very selected issues for a discussion, to encourage further thinking. And this, if you want to go to the causes of torture, the volumes and volumes are available of the work we have done already. So that this discussion was not meant for that. Yeah, it was just to highlight some issues and to see some kind of activism, development of some kind of activity to further, to go from where we are, to go further into these issues. It was not meant to be an analysis.
If one needs a mantra for this, it would be research and follow-up. Constant research into the aspects which generate the causes for torture and the torture itself, and the follow-up. Going back, one of the biggest reasons why torture debates don't take off, at least in India, this is my view, is because Maybe a case goes to court, but what happens to the case after it has gone to court, nobody knows. So recently I was speaking with some friends in Chennai about 15 years a case is pending in court. It's an allegation of torture. That doesn't actually have the effect of curbing torture.
What you say is generally true. There is no hardly follow-up. Now we develop a model, in Sri Lanka, where hundreds of cases were followed up, even 10 years, month after month. Every time the case taken up, the lawyers appear in those cases, they report on those cases, and the 400 cases that we publish were all cases that have been followed up from about 2002 up to now daily. So what we are trying to do also is to develop a practice of encouraging activists, lawyers and others to develop in their countries the methodologies for following up these cases and develop a knowledge out of the research. The type of research that we have been trying to do is that kind of follow-up research, in-depth knowledge about the issue of torture. Now today, without any kind of doubt, we can say as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, we know the subject thoroughly. Because for about 15 years, consistently on a day in and day out basis, a huge amount of work was done by large numbers of people, and a huge body of research has been developed. So we hope that, we are trying to encourage that in every country, in Sri Lanka also to do even further, and every country to develop that kind of in-depth research with the knowledge. But what we want now is not only to research on the torture issue, but also how the various institutions reacted to that. What did the police do? What did the government do? What happened even if they win the case? Thereafter what happened? So like that, to comprehensive follow-up onto various aspects. And what we want a further idea of a parliamentarians meeting was also to get the parliamentarians involved in that, so that into the parliamentary process also we can take the in a greater way this issue.
In fact, if this is the level of research that has been done in Sri Lanka, I'm sure it will bear fruit. It's just that this war has probably as a sort of a as a force majeure, it has intervened, and the results are bound to show. With that research, there can be no stopping.
Any further?
Forward to create a kind of non-confrontational kind of dialogue between parliamentarians and civil society in the respective countries, which can actually discuss and debate the particular issues much deeper than, of course, is possible here today. I think this is a kind of also a kind of an invitation to maybe reopening the space for such a dialogue, because I think often there is a very aggressive dialogue, if there is one, or there is no dialogue because also of general mistrust between maybe even politicians and civil society in the respective countries. So I think this is a wonderful kind of opportunity to inspire for a national dialogue on these issues, and at the same line, I'm thinking about the dialogue on the basis of the regular kind of reviews of the countries at the UPR process in the international system, and the kind of use of international kind of platforms for discussing how to progress on police reforms. I think this is more a comment or maybe an encouragement.
Actually, that's a very good question. As we know that as far as the NGOs are concerned, we are very eager to talk to our, the members of parliament and all that. I think it's the two parliamentarians who can answer the question.
Yeah, I can. I think what you said was good. I think on the creating the debate, there are two levels. One is debate at the level of the parliamentarians, and the other is the debate at the level of the public. Now, just borrowing from somebody else's book, a page from somebody else's book, is that Transparency International, right, had a seminar on a somewhere close to Parliament, and invited parliamentarians, and we discussed the issue of corruption. In that seminar that day, we had about 225 member parliament. I don't know how many were invited. We had about 5 from the government and about 12 from the opposition. That's not bad. You see, it's not bad. I mean, at least it's a start. So if we borrow a page from that book, we probably can do one on torture and ill treatment, a similar thing. And there was 1 or 2 presentations, and then it was a discussion. So that's a possibility. The second one is on the public realm. I certainly have some ideas on how we can probably take this into the television talk show space and invite people, and it will create a lot more interest. I'll just make one other very quick point, which is related to the whole frame rather than to what you said. Some of these things, when we are talking of reform, it's to do with exposure. I always think like this. I think like, why am I, who am I, is because of the exposure I had. Otherwise, inherently, I'm not different to the torturer, because human nature is human nature, right? And I may have committed the same crimes that somebody else is committing. Somebody said, what's the problem? The problem is with men, so I don't think that I'm different to other men. It's just that you're getting a different result, and that's to do with probably exposure and other things. So I'm just focusing on the word exposure. And there are 2 things I'm thinking of here. Is one is that if we can expose people not to the problem but more to the solution. If you're talking of police reform, to actually show them how a better policing system actually works. You see, and you're right. Now the exposure can be done in 2 ways. One is you actually take people away from their situation to another country, to another situation, and actually let them see it. I can tell you it works. I've tried it in my old job, and it works wonders. It's not the same as having a seminar, showing them a film, keeping them in their own space. When you remove them from there and actually transport them into another space, the result is completely different. So that's one. The other thing is, people like Klaus, we have to find a way of how do we actually link them to the situation on the ground.
Yes.
That's the other reverse exposure, you see. And they need to be, because it's that educative process, you see. And I think that's also something needs to be practically, we need to brainstorm a little bit of how that can be practically done.
I've got my due respect to my friend from Sri Lanka, like taking the officers, the police officers to another country like Denmark or whatever it is. But how many police officers you can take them out to a developed country to see how they are functioning? For the reason because there are thousands and thousands of police officers in India, and Pakistan and Sri Lanka. It's very difficult. My contention would be, see, there are 3 reasons. Let's be practical. If you have seen the police working in your country, like I've seen the police working in my country, and there are 3 things which are very important, because I've dealt with the police, because I became a judge in my country at the age of 23. And as a judge and a first-class magistrate, at a very young age, I would see that the police was responsible to me for the arrest of the accused, and for the challan of the accused, and for the trial of the accused persons. And later on in my practical life as a lawyer, I have seen that there are 3 things which are very important. Why do the police commit torture? Why do the police do not listen to the needs of an ordinary citizen? why do the police do not register a case on the complaint of a complainant and get mixed up with the other party? There are three things which are very important. Number one is financial corruption. Number two is the political patronage. And number three, the police is not answerable to anyone. If we can look into the steps as far as these three things are concerned, I think we can be, I'm not saying we can solve the problem, we can minimize the problem. Let us say the corruption. As far as the corruption is concerned, because the police in a developing country, their salaries are very meager. They do not even have motorcycles to do investigation. They have got to depend upon other people for the purpose of reaching from one place to another place, from their home to the police station, from the police station to a place where the offense or the incident has been committed. So the first thing is we have got to see that the salaries and the privileges of the police are to an extent that they do not have to rely upon another person for the purpose of doing their job, for the purpose of feeding their family. This is the first and the foremost thing. Because the corruption takes place because of two reasons. Number one, the corruption takes place because the salary is not enough to meet the day-to-day demand of the family. And second, the corruption takes place because he wants to live a luxurious life. In 80% of the cases I've seen, the corruption takes place, whether it is police or some other department in Pakistan or in any other developing country, because the salaries are not sufficient to meet the requirement of their needs and the needs of the family. Number two is there has got to be security of service. When there is no security of service, the police look for patronage, and the patronage they look into is either the rich people, the vested class, who wants to exploit the situation, who wants to exploit the police for the purpose of meeting their own needs, like a landlord, like an industrialist. He's a rich man and he wants to do certain things. He wants to subjugate the people of his area, the people in his factory, or the people who are working on his lands. So they uses the clout of the police, and the police, as it does not have, and there is no financial security, plus there is no security of job. He's scared. If he would not do the job of this man, this rich landlord, or the rich parliamentarian, or the influential parliamentarian, he would get transferred from this place to a far-flung place where he will be away from the family. If there is a security of his job, like nobody would be transferred at least for 3 years or something like that, then he would not listen to people. He would have the financial security, he would have the security of his service. And then I think we can minimize the torture which the police does or the wrongdoing which the police does. And the third thing which I just discussed is that the police is not answerable to anyone. If we have the administrative courts, we have got to make out laws. And it is the duty of the parliamentarians to make out the laws specifically with regard to the police, that there should be administrative courts. If a policeman has done a wrong, if a complaint has not been registered, the man can go to the administrative court, and the judge sitting over there has got to decide the case as quickly as possible within a week or so. And he can be reprimanded, he can be demoted, he can be suspended, he can be thrown out of the job, and all these things if are there, and the action taken is very quickly by the administrative court rather than other actions, then the police would be scared. He's got to register the case. He will not commit torture, he will not commit the wrongdoing, and I think if we look into these three things, these three things which I have said, these are very practical approach towards the problem which we are facing. And I feel, and I'm pretty sure that we will be able to, if not eliminate, we will be able to minimize the problem of torture, the problem of custodial deaths, the problem of corruption, and the problem of the high-handedness, the brutality of the police force. Thank you.
It may differ from country to country, especially because in India, after two former Director General of Police filed a public interest litigation, this case has been mentioned by my friends from India as well, there has been a specific set of reforms. And in spite of the reforms, for instance, in my state, we cannot transfer a police officer for 2 years after he is posted. Only after that he can be transferred. Unless, of course, there is some exceptional cases where he's involved in one or two corruption or other issues where there are evidences. Even so, after that, there has been a lot of issues which concerns of the human rights community which has not been covered by the police reform. So I would not say, I would like to pose this question: how much of reform is necessary to really address the kind of issues you are raising? Because we have, because of the commission, a lot of reforms have been initiated, and I know that it has been positive to some extent in terms of remuneration even, because of, in spite of that, the police are still collecting, money at the gates. There are so many corruption going on. I think greed has no such limitations, and greed knows no rules and reforms.
You can minimize corruption, you cannot finish corruption. Very difficult. Maybe in a few countries in the world, but generally speaking, it's very difficult to finish corruption. We have got to take steps. We have got to take steps to minimize corruption. And one of the ways, you are right. You increase the salary remunerations. There's a security of service, but still there are certain police officers who are corrupt and who would remain corrupt, despite the fact that India has done a good job. The CBI is very strong. I must say that. And even the Lalu Prasad was not spared. But again, I would say that let there be administrative courts where an aggrieved person can go and make a complaint and have a quick and a speedy decision. Because justice delayed is justice denied.
On the topic, but in a different tangent. One of the problems when we deal with cases of torture, particularly concerning the point that Ashok had raised on follow-up, is that when you deal with specific instances of torture, from our experience what we have found is we end up having to have a local partner or a person who works actually on the ground who will have to deal with local power structures. Because this is like throwing a stone at a hornet's nest when you deal with the case of torture. The entire establishment is today so well oiled, so well perfected in its art of silencing people, to such an extent that if you seriously deal with people will today, I mean even in the Indian context, filing a complaint against torture, if there is enough persuasion, if there is enough follow-up, is possible. Of course, it might be very challenging for an individual as a victim to go to a police station and file a complaint. But when it is taken up by a human rights organization, or there is a legal representation which is supported by somebody, lodging a complaint is possible. Or you can go to a magistrate court, 190 is available, so you can file a petition. But then if you try to follow it up, then you see the wrath of the system just showering upon you. It is not, there is no easy solution to deal with that also. One of the issues that we somehow missed so far is the use of technology. Because there are ways by which, and I think Asian Human Rights Commission can claim a very unique space in the civil society arena, at least in the Asian context, that we have explored and we continue exploring and expanding. Now, these kind of cameras were not present during, for example, the first meeting. Today, well, Josephina was there, but not a live recording with facilities like this. But today it is possible. Next meeting, we might have even a live broadcast. Never know. This is what we are planning to. So what I'm trying to say in short is that there is no adequate use of technology, not only by the civil society, but also by parliament. Now we have at least these people who are with us, I believe, in the fight against torture. Now we get you to talk about it. How many more people perhaps that we could identify collectively who could, let's say, be on Skype? I mean, very small steps, the baby steps that you were talking about. Who could comment on a case? It goes a long way when it is required to generate a debate on an issue. And this is what the media does. I mean, we have a lot of things to learn from the media, but somehow the civil society activism shies off from using the facilities that is available today. So on one hand, we have to be aware of the kind of challenge that is there when you deal with following up of a case of torture. Whereas on the other hand, we also need to make use the maximum of the technology that is available. So it's on the topic, but on a slightly different angle. Thank you.
As a result of the question put by Erik, perhaps, at least in India, there is something called training or the orientation program for all the newly elected legislators or parliamentarians. That is when they get elected at the time of swearing in, they are given this orientation. Perhaps maybe Asian Human Rights Commission can, try or strive to be part of that orientation program, because Indian media gives a lot of space to a lot of political parties to hear their position on various issues, but that is at the all India level. I represent a national party which is ruling in the center, and my party will have a position on torture. If suppose there is a media event in Delhi where discussion on torture is held, for instance, like the IT is a big thing in India, but the e-governance policy is implemented in only 2 states in India, Andhra and Karnataka, not in all the states. So if we have in all the 29 states a set of training for all the legislators and member of parliaments, it will be a first step towards creating a large-scale awareness in India, which is necessary.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very quick addition. I agree with most of the things that have been said and discussed so far. I would just like to add in relation to police reform, something that the police people themselves have told us, what they think will matter also, so far as they are concerned. It's about providing them psychosocial support. Why? Because they are people themselves, and they're involved in a very violent situations. They have their own problems, and they're confronted with a lot of pressure. So sometimes when we talk to them, they ask us, why are you providing psychosocial support to this kind of people and not for us? Of course, we have an answer to that. But the thing is, their institutions should be able to see that need, and they should have a way to articulate that. And maybe it is also something that can be put across in the police authorities in the Philippines, also with the parliament. But these things we are able to arrive at this kind of information by involving ordinary police officers themselves in discussions like this.
Yes.
Very informal, non-threatening, inviting them to speak like ordinary citizens, like we are, and see themselves how are they located as part of as an agent of the state, and also as human persons or part of the community. And the same thing with the parliamentarians. So when we speak about dialogue, starting a conversation about violence, it's something that we have actually done a small scale in a community, which allowed young people to say violence committed upon them by their parents, sexual molestation by peers. Then discussion later on moved towards the responsibility of the police to protect them, and how they detest how the police handle them. And that eventually revolved towards a certain kind of consensus, how relationship can be improved between community and the police. So
Okay,
I'm just thinking that the power of dialogue, especially if there's a democratic space to do this, can also be an avenue to continue this kind of discourse.
Okay, on that tone, we can finish this session. So the evolving the conversation on torture as much as possible, spreading the conversation of torture, I think is the ultimately the one aspect that we have to be continuously doing. So what we did now also was an attempt to develop this kind of conversations. So with that, we will bring this part of the discussion to an end.